Staples' Caleb Smith put on a show last year when he led the state in many passing categories. And everyone took notice. And with all eyes on him, the senior quarterback stepped up. He threw for 2,008 yards and 21 touchdowns. A step down from a year ago, but he ramped it up with his legs. He rushed for another 1,497 yards and 26 touchdowns, leading the Wreckers to the Class LL state title and the #1 spot in the final New Haven Register Game Time CT media poll. Smith was the most feared and keyed-on player for the Wreckers, and when it mattered the most, he stepped up. He rushed for 2 or more touchdowns in 10 games, and during the Wreckers championship run, he rushed for 8 touchdowns, leading the program to its first state title since 2005. The team's #1 finish in the poll was its first since 1975, and Smith becomes the first Staples quarterback to be selected to this team since Mac DeVito in 1997. Staples' Caleb Smith is the New Haven Register Player of the Year, the first player in program history to be named the Register's Player of the Year. When Adam Behrens arrived in Westport from IMG Academy for the 2019 season, it raised many eyebrows across the state. During his first season, the Wreckers went 2-8, and then the next season was canceled due to COVID-19. Many wondered if the Staples football program would ever get back to its heyday. A 7-3 season in 2021 was followed up with a playoff appearance and 9-2 record in 2022, and it was a step in the right direction. This season, the Wreckers opened the year with a loss to West Haven, but rallied to win the next 12 games, including avenging their loss to West Haven in the Class LL state title. It was Staples' first championship since 2005, and they finished as the #1 team in the final Game Time CT media poll for the first time since 1975. Staples coach Adam Behrens is the New Haven Register Coach of the Year. It was a weird season for Madison, filled with off-the-field distractions, but it never affected Jason Champagne's performances. The senior back rushed for 1,293 yards and 26 touchdowns, leading the Panthers to the state semifinals for the second straight season. Champagne finished the season with 34 touchdowns. 5 of them came on special teams, and he caught 3 more touchdowns for good measure. Massix Jason Champagne. Killingly Soren Reef was one of the few remaining key players from the 2021 Killingly state title team. And despite Reef not leading his team to a title, he certainly did everything he could this season. The 2-time New Haven Register first team selection rushed for 2,488 yards and 37 touchdowns to lead his team to the Class L playoffs. Reef rushed for over 100 yards in 10 games and for 200 yards or more in 6 games. He chipped in on defense with 35 tackles and 3 sacks. Killingly Soren Reef. There might not have been a more exciting player in the state than Maloney's Dante Kelly. The 2-time New Haven Register first-team selection to damage in all phases of the game, scoring 27 touchdowns on 1,775 all-purpose yards. He caught 51 passes for 787 yards and 10 touchdowns. He rushed for 11 more touchdowns on 382 rushing yards and returned 4 kicks and 2 punts back for scores. Kelly was a lockdown defensive back and chipped in with 24 tackles on defense, leading Maloney to the Class L semifinals. Maloney's Dante Kelly. West Haven's Armani Reed was the most dangerous player on one of the most dangerous offenses in the state. The senior scored 19 touchdowns for the Westies, helping lead them to the state championship for the first time since 2003. He caught 67 passes for 1,100 yards and 14 touchdowns. He caught touchdowns of 73, 77, and 82 yards during the season. Reed scored 4 special teams touchdowns, and on defense he grabbed 3 interceptions. West Haven's Armani Reed. Southington had one of the best wide receiver rooms in the state, and senior Rashard Williams was at the head of the class. He hauled in 58 passes for 1,191 yards and 15 touchdowns. He had over 100 receiving yards in 6 games, and on defense he made 4 interceptions. Williams finished the season with 21 touchdowns, helping Southington reach the Class LL playoffs. Southington's Rashard Williams. Staples' offense was a key part to its championship season, and the big guys up front were a big reason why. Staples senior Tanner Chalupsa anchored the offensive line that rushed for over 2,300 yards and 35 touchdowns, and threw for over 2,000 yards and 21 more scores. Chalupsa helped out on defense with 22 tackles and a sack. He helped keep Player of the Year Caleb Smith's pocket clean, which translated into a Class L championship and the #1 ranking in the final Game Time CT media poll. Staples' Tanner Chalupsa. New Canaan's Ben Reagan was a stalwart on the Class L champions offensive line. While the Rams found their identity throughout the season, the offensive line led by Reagan, a Johns Hopkins commit, consistently held strong, giving them time to operate. The team finished with over 2,100 rushing yards and 35 touchdowns and threw for 21 more scores. New Canaan defended its Class L title and finished #2 in the final Game Time CT media poll. New Canaan's Ben Reagan. Following in his siblings' footsteps is never easy, especially if you play for a program of Ansonia's pedigree. It was no worries for Ansonia sophomore Jacob Romanowski. The Romanowski-led offensive line was a key for the Chargers as they once again made the Class S playoffs and reached the state semifinals. Ansonia's Jacob Romanowski. The single wing is a staple for the North Haven football program, and while there are many parts that need to run smoothly to make it work, the offensive line is one of the most important parts, and Brendan Ryan was one of the best. The Bowden commit anchored the offensive line that blocked for over 3,600 rushing yards and 43 touchdowns. He added 54 tackles for a defense that allowed just 10.4 points a game and won the Class MM championship for the second straight season. North Haven's Brendan Ryan. Peter Von Velakis was named to the New Haven Register's first team after a strong sophomore season, where he helped Greenwich win the Class LL title. This season he shifted to the center position and was tasked to lead an inexperienced group, and the group played well. Von Velakis and his line helped open up holes that ran for 1,800 rushing yards and 28 touchdowns to go along with 1,900 passing yards and 21 more scores. Greenwich's Peter Von Velakis. Before the season started, Naugatuck's Jed Hall was shifted from the backfield to the quarterback position. And if there were any bumps in the road, it didn't show. Hall rushed for 1,478 yards and 20 touchdowns. He caught 2 touchdowns, threw for almost 1,000 yards, and 15 more touchdowns, leading the Greyhounds to a perfect 10-0 regular season record. The senior chipped in on D with 22 tackles, helping the Greyhounds get to the Class L playoffs. He rushed for 100 yards 8 times and had a legendary Thanksgiving performance, rushing for 228 yards and 2 touchdowns in a 20-point win over Ansonia. Naugatuck's Jet Hall. It was a resurgent season for the Stanford Black Knights, one that saw them reach the state playoffs for the first time since 1995, and senior kicker Jack Solomita was a major contributor. He averaged 55.4 yards off the tee, and of his 54 kickoffs, 26 of them went for touchbacks, giving his opponents no chance to return the kicks. He was 4 for 4 on field goals, kicking a long of 38 yards against Ridgefield, and was 31 for 36 on PATs. He was also the team's punter and averaged 33.8 yards a punt. Stanford's Jack Solomita.